And welcome back to the Sports Cubicle. Thank you for staying clocked in. We're right back, and this is the fastest hour in sports talk radio. So let's get right down to it. The NBA is starting its 75th anniversary this Tuesday, and I couldn't think of anyone better to join us than soaring down south, Josh Buckhalter. What's going on, Josh?
What's happening, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. So, Josh, I got to ask, out of everything right now, there's been so many, trades and draft picks and free agency moves. Who do you think won the NBA offseason this year?
Oh man, one the offseason is kind of tough. It's very subjective, but I definitely like what New York did. I don't know if it's going to translate to many wins, but I like the fact that they went out and addressed some more scoring with Kemba Walker. They got a point guard, if he can, simulate that way. I like what the Lakers did. I like getting Russell Westbrook. So that to me is a guy takes some of the pressure, playmaking pressure off of LeBron James. I also like what Brooklyn did in drafting Cam Thomas, a young guy who come off the bench, but he's ready to score right now. So there's a few teams that I think did well. I don't know if there's really one necessary winner, though. Some people would say the Heat, getting Kyle Lowry. I'm not completely sold on that, but we'll see how that works out. I don't know if there's really one team that I would say won.
Okay. Looking at my notes here, I took so many. One team I noticed that made a lot of changes, and I don't see anything successful coming in, is the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, they signed so many people because that team's getting so old. Do you think this is going to be do you think a transitional year's coming, a rebuild year's coming, or do you think they're just swinging for the fences, throwing to the wall, seeing what sticks?
So anytime you have LeBron James on a team, you always have a chance. And Anthony Davis is a top 5 player in the NBA as well. So I think when you got those two guys, adding Russell Westbrook doesn't hurt. I get the concerns about their age, but we know LeBron spends an insane amount of money on his body. Russell Westbrook's been pretty durable in his career. The X factor is going to be Anthony Davis, and if he can stay healthy. I still think that if healthy, they are the cream of the crop in the West. But again, like you pointed out, man, that's a big caveat right now.
Josh, let me ask you something. Thanks for joining us here on the show. I think the one fascinating thing in the NBA for the 75th anniversary is that the Eastern Conference is deep. It's a very interesting conference compared to, let's say, like the last decade where a lot of it was LeBron heavy, whether it was his Cavs or his Heat. And then you see right now where the Bulls have a lot of excitement going into this season, but if we're being realistic, they're probably like a 7 or 8 seed, maybe even a play-in team. Can you tell us a little bit about what your thoughts of covering the Atlanta Hawks and seeing what's going on with Brooklyn and Milwaukee being the defending champions, how the Eastern Conference has really just became a very stacked conference and how they're going to play into this season heading into this 75th anniversary?
Yeah, speaking of the teams who won the offseason, if you want to put a label on, you can put that to the Bulls as well. I'm higher on both the Bulls and the Hawks than most people are, but not insanely. I'm not saying that either team is going to be winning a championship this year. With the Bulls, there was a lot of concern about the fit with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball. I think we kind of saw that that's not going to be that big of an issue. The bigger worries are going to be defensively and inside in the paint. That's both grabbing rebounds and stopping opposing attacks. Now, what I do think that is if they're healthy, they're going to be up there in the 5-6 range if they're healthy. That's a big if because we know how big of a risk injuries are in every season. And the Bulls were kind of ravaged with the COVID and things like that last year. In the Hawks case, I don't see any reason why they can't be one of the top 3 teams in the league. I know that people are going to look at how they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals and want to point to all of the injuries that were going on in the East, with Kyrie Irving and whatnot going out, and how the entire pathway that they had to take to get there. But the Hawks themselves were also banged up. I think we talked about this last time we spoke. So I can see them as they're going into this season a lot more healthy, a lot healthier than they were last year. I could definitely see them challenging for a top 3 seed. So while I'm higher on both, I got Hawks as probably a 3 seed if everything works out like it should, and the Bulls can definitely be a 5 seed if they get all the braces on.
Hi, Josh, this is Dan in the studio here. I'm pretty high on the Bulls. They a complete remake. They only have 2 players left from 18 months ago, so that's a good thing. And unlike the Blackhawks, I think they'll get off to a good start because they play the Pistons home and then the Pelicans at home. So at least that might be a good thing that they can get some confidence with their new talent meshing together.
No, you know what? You're spot on. Getting a quick start is definitely key, especially because, like I just said, with the injuries that can come in, you want to be able to get some kind of a cushion. And we know how every season there's always some kind of randomness that happens. And what you don't want it to be is an injury that takes you out when you're finding your groove. So if you can get out to that hot start, then it makes it a little bit easier down the stretch when you do have some of those bumps and bruises and you're kind of slugging through the tough days, especially when you get close to the All-Star break. And then after that, when things really start to tighten up. So if they can get out to a fast start, again, that 5 seed is going to be a very much in play for me throughout this season.
Right now, Josh, there's been a lot of talk with the Bulls here between Zach LaVine and DeRozan, and a lot of this team needs a leader. And personally, I don't think Zach LaVine is the guy to do it. But do you think this is going to be a battle between him and DeRozan to see who can lead this team into becoming a possible playoff contender moving forward?
I'm going to have to push back on you a little bit. I think one of the things that we heard about Zach was that he was a numbers guy more than a team guy. But we saw this summer with him over in Tokyo. He kind of sacrificed, not even kind of, he really sacrificed his personal numbers to go and play defense, no less, in the international competition. And they won gold. And he performed very well. He was one of their more consistent performers. So I won't say that he isn't the guy to do it. And I also will say that I think DeRozan comes in willingly handing that torch to Zach and empowering him sort of to be that guy, because the best player on this team is Zach LaVine. And while we won't see him necessarily get the same kind of numbers maybe as often, those gaudy numbers that we saw last season, I think we'll see him be more efficient and much more effective on both ends of the floor this coming year.
Josh, do you think at this point, as we're getting ready to start this 75th anniversary, is there goodwill? What is the relationship with Mark Eversley, Arturas Karnisovas, and the rest of the NBA? We talked about the overhaul of this team and how the roster just is completely different than it was just 18 months ago. They have gone, feet to the ground when they got into office. How do you think they're looked around the NBA right now? How do you think the Bulls are being viewed amongst their peers? Because we know for a long time, we know that Gar Forman and more John Paxson are really smart NBA guys. But at this point, with this new frontman's doing this, how do you think the relationship and they're being looked upon in the NBA?
Well, perception is reality, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what we've seen this offseason is a lot of them have been much more well-received than anything that this team has done in the past few years. You look at when guys like Garrett Temple have left this offseason, they had nothing but good things to say. In the past, you had guys like Wendell Carter would have been traded. He would have probably looked the Bulls up on the way out talking bad about Garpax. So I think you see some more respect. Maybe you don't necessarily like the moves, but there's more understanding of why they're being done. And there's not as much complaint about the return. I think as far as how other teams are perceiving them right now, that's yet to be seen, and especially with the free agents and that nature, how they're able to land anybody a big value coming up. If that changes the case, then we'll see, I think, a big shift in Chicago returning to one of the premier franchises. I think there's still stories, but they've lost some of that luster as a premier franchise because they haven't been able to attract the big talent. They haven't been able to be in the spotlight. And I think the first big change that we've seen is how much coverage it got this offseason about them. Whether it's good or bad, they've been talked about an awful lot, and that's not something that we saw in previous.
What do you think about their size on their actual team? I mean, we've seen that they've had this overhaul. They're big in certain positions, and in certain positions they're really small. And I think across the board we're seeing that amongst the NBA. What do you think when it comes to actually being schematically on the court? How do you think that's going to affect them? That at points they're going to have Patrick Williams at the 4, which he might be able to do in today's NBA. But what are you feeling right now when it comes to a lot of teams in the NBA playing very small ball?
You know what? It's going to come down to what Tony Bradley can do. We know what Vooch is. Vooch is going to be able to play the bulk of the game at the 5, but he can't play all the minutes. So how long can Tony Bradley come in and how effective can he be? Because you're right. They're small elsewhere. Beyond those two guys, I'm not sure if anybody else is even breaking 6'8". So you're going to be tasking them with going up against some pretty big guys, especially in the East, where we saw throughout the playoffs last year how much the size inside matters. So if you're trying to make it to that point, I think that's when you start really seeing it become a factor and a detriment to them, because they're going to struggle to get some rebounds some nights. They're going to struggle to slow down some penetration some nights. And again, it'll just come down to how fast and how much Tony Bradley is able to give you coming off of the bench.
Forget about Marko Seminovic if he makes the team.
You're counting on him for offense. So I don't think you're going to count on him as much as in terms of grabbing some boards. He's shooting a 3. You know what I'm saying? It's not as many rebounds coming to guys who are shooting 3. Okay. That's a long off the back.
All right, Josh. Josh, we gotta let you go, but first, before I go, NBA championship predictions. If you give me one right now.
Oh my goodness, I'm gonna go. I know this is tough. I'm gonna go chalk, man. I can't go against chalk at this point in the season. It's still so early. I'm gonna have to say Lakers and Nets right now because on paper I don't see anybody beating either one of those two.
Josh Buckhalter of Soaring Down South, and happy belated birthday, by the way.
Happy
Josh, before I
birthday,
forget.
Josh.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Talk
Thanks
to you
so much
soon,
for joining
buddy.
us. You have a great
Have
night,
a good
man.
one, guys.